Welcome and hello to Dr. Reese's Head to Toe Healing Live. Today I have on our call our three specialists that work on posture alignment therapy, mindfulness, and also nutrition. Dr. Reese created Head to Toe Healing several years ago, and he found by incorporating three macro methods, working on the musculoskeletal system, nutrition, and mindfulness combined, giving the body the right environment it needs to heal itself, the body can do miraculous things. Pain can go away, chronic conditions can be reversed. It's truly amazing. So today we're going to be talking about a new topic. Well, it's been around forever, but we're going to be talking about kidney dysfunction today. And with me, my name is Coach Karen, and with me is Coach Sean, Coach Ryan, and Coach Gingy. But I wanted to hop over to Coach Ryan first and just say, we've had so many people come to us that get on our intro calls, get onto our calls and chat with us, and they're really experiencing a lot of discomfort with their kidneys. It could be chronic kidney disease, it could be they're on dialysis, they have kidney stones. So much is going on and so much more. Ryan, what really are the common contributing factors for the kidney to start having dysfunction?
Well, I would start by saying that the majority of people who come to us as members come to us with other symptoms, whatever it is, hot flashes or arthritis or diabetes or something. And especially when they get blood work, we look at the blood work and we often see that their GFR is low, which is a sign of kidney malfunction or dysfunction. So they didn't even know that they had a kidney problem. And there's more markers that you could look at, of course, but that one is a big glaring one. If your GFR is low, then your kidneys are simply not functioning properly. And once again, just most people, that wasn't on their symptom list. They didn't mention anything about their kidneys, and they didn't realize that the kidney dysfunction or underfunctioning could have anything to do with their other symptoms. So it is extremely common. I would consider it the same causes generally as disease in general, for the most part. The vast majority of chronic disease is simply caused by eating processed foods or foods without enough nutrients in it, which is all foods. Basically, it's impossible to get enough nutrients from food alone. And multiple nutrient deficiencies. So bad foods and nutrient deficiencies. And again, even people who eat good diets or relatively good diets, they try real hard. Once again, it's impossible for them to get enough nutrients. Once they're deficient, that's even more true, right? So if you're trying to get enough just to maintain being healthy to begin with, it's already impossible. But you need more nutrients to heal something than you do to maintain. So it just becomes double impossible if you already have those deficiencies and are trying to reverse it with food alone. It won't happen.
Very true. With individuals that, well, some of them come to us and they say, I do have chronic kidney, or I have chronic kidney disease. With individuals like those, are there warning signals ahead of time that maybe they ignored that? Well, you mentioned processed foods. So obviously processed foods is a contributing factor. Lack of nutrition is a contributing factor. Are there other warning signals that an individual might find? So that way they might realize beforehand, before it gets to a point of really being horrible. Are there any things you can share on that?
In the vast majority of cases, kidney problems in general are late stage metabolic symptoms. So you get a bunch of early stage stuff first, right? Problems with weight control, usually being overweight, but sometimes being unable to gain weight and being, really skinny. Diabetes or hypoglycemia or pre-diabetes, any blood sugar problem, right? This stuff normally comes first, right? First, you get the blood sugar problems with like weight and mood and energy type of symptoms along with that. Probably blood pressure as well, although blood pressure might come in after. This all comes before kidney failure, right? Or kidney disease, full-on kidney disease. You're very unlikely to be diagnosed with full-blown kidney disease unless you have some of these other problems first. Once again, it's usually blood sugar, weight, mood. Those are all in the same blood sugar category. and blood pressure, elevated blood cholesterol. All those are metabolic problems that come way before kidney problems. Usually, vast majority of cases.
Wow. And people don't even realize it. A lot of times they'll go and they'll go to the standard medical system and get a pill or a procedure to try to get it taken care of. But is that just masking the situation, not addressing the situation?
In the case of kidneys, everything that mainstream medical doctors do masks the situation. At best, it's a band-aid, and usually it's not even a very good band-aid. You know, they'll give you diuretic drugs and stuff like that, but none of it works very well.
Hmm.
But yeah, everybody knows that kidney problems, kidney failure is one of the end stage complications of diabetes. I just think the average person doesn't realize that that's also an end stage problem with metabolic syndrome in general. So you don't have to have full blown diabetes. You could have a somewhat minor blood sugar problem or hypoglycemia, which is almost never diagnosed because to properly diagnose it requires a 6-hour glucose tolerance test. And your standard doctor probably doesn't even know what that is, and let alone be willing to spend 6 hours on a single patient, right? Usually you get like 5 to 15 minutes with a doctor, right? They're not going to run a 6-hour glucose tolerance test. So they wouldn't even know if you have hypoglycemia in the majority of cases. And yeah, lots of people are warned about prediabetes early on, but their doctor simply says, you know, make sure to eat better and exercise. And it can, for a lot of people, help them manage a blood sugar problem, but it really just doesn't address the root of the problem, which is primarily nutrient deficiency and damage from processed foods and chemicals and so on.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Coach Sean, I wanted to jump over to you. Is there, well, with individuals that have kidney issues or kidney dysfunction, is there anything posture can do? Does that affect it?
Absolutely. So the kidneys are one of the organs affected by that slouching posture from the sedentary lifestyle. So essentially what's happening is when you're slouching, all of those organs in between, so your stomach, your intestines, heart, kidneys, those are going to be impacted. The organs don't like to be squeezed. And especially if it's a filtering organ, that's like squeezing on a filter and then trying to still filter water or whatever you're filtering efficiently. It's going to do half the job and like probably twice the effort. And so being able to align yourself properly to allow your circulation to flow, no kinks in the hoses, no kinks in the lymphatic hose, and no kinks in the blood hose. And when that happens, it allows the organ to perform efficiently. When you live sedentary and you don't move properly, and your body begins to slouch and turn into a C posture, that's when problems can start to occur. And it's going to exacerbate any type of issue pertaining to like drainage or just anything that is impacted by blood flow or lymphatic flow. So, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Coach Gingy, when somebody's experiencing kidney dysfunction, how does mindfulness play a role with that?
Well, as Dr. Reese would say, your mind is connected to your nervous system. It's part of the nervous system, and that's connected to every organ and tissue in the body. So, of course, the way that you think and the emotions that you experience are going to impact you on a cellular level, especially at the level of the kidneys. Because I think, as we've already established here, the two biggest the two biggest problems for the kidneys is blood sugar, metabolic issues, blood pressure, metabolic issues, and other things like that. And those can all be affected by the way that you think. Well, I'd say actually there's a third one there. There's the digestive system. So those three, because the digestive system could inhibit the absorption of certain nutrients, even if you are getting enough nutrients in. If you have bad gut health, then you're not going to be absorbing all of them. You're not what you eat, you're what you absorb, right? So your mindset, if you're experiencing stress or anger or fear or anything that's going to activate the sympathetic nervous system, then that's going to cause your digestion to go out of balance, to go off whack, to have resources allocated away from digestion. which is going to cause the malabsorption of nutrients and have down the line kidney issues. You could also raise your blood pressure. Everybody, has got the idea, the picture in their mind of a cartoon character with steam coming out of its ears, and it's like all the pressure and the body's rising up. It's that kind of deal where if the blood pressure is going up, it's going to impact the kidneys. And blood sugar levels, inflammation, poor foods, all these things are going to impact the kidneys in some way. So I recommend everybody get really present and mindful as to what foods they're taking in, if they're causing inflammation, if they're maybe praying or being grateful or something before, giving thanks before you eat a meal. That can actually help reset the digestive system to absorb more nutrients, because gratitude is one of those things that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which turns digestion back on. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not stressed, or at least stressed as little as you possibly can, because your body can tolerate a certain amount of stress. But too much stress will lead to too much inflammation, which will lead to too much for the kidneys to handle. So you can easily see how from all three of these perspectives, you can cause kidney dysfunction with your posture, with your mindset, with your nutrition. And it's generally what we see in the membership is that it's a little bit of all three.
Thank you for that. For those that are tuning in and listening to us, if you have a question or a comment, please drop it in the chat. We'll do our best to answer questions today. I wanted to loop back over to Ryan. Ryan, you mentioned earlier that if somebody has a low GFR, that's an indication that something's going wrong. With head to toe healing, is that something that's easily reversible?
Usually I expect it to go up just as they move forward with the program, right? They're doing the posture, they're doing the mindfulness, they're being on the 90 essential nutrients, they're getting off the poor four foods. It should go up. There are some trickier cases in the metabolic category for sure, but we've never failed. And when you're talking about extreme kidney problems like people on dialysis, we've also never failed. I have had one very difficult case for dialysis. He was a very odd case, and it took about a year to get him off of dialysis. But we've seen tons of cases within like 2 weeks. We can't promise anything, obviously, but that was always the normal. For me, being trained in this business, I would expect, within the first month that most people would be able to get off of dialysis. And, this conversation is not necessarily about dialysis, but that is the worst case scenario, right? Your kidneys aren't working properly. You're going to be put on dialysis eventually. And for a lot of people who have diabetes or metabolic syndrome right now, that is their final destination if they don't change track, right? If they don't change course now, that's where they'll end up. So I'm just saying that even in the worst case, people come and say it's stage 4 or whatever. Usually there's no real problem in getting them off of the diuretics or getting them off of dialysis, helping them to. They're the one that does it.
That's so encouraging to hear. Actually, I spoke with somebody yesterday and she was on dialysis and she was hoping that head to toe healing could reverse that for her. So it's wonderful to know that that is possible. We have somebody in the comments, Gayleen is asking, how can I watch this more often? Well, Gayleen, we do this once a week on Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in and get more information about head to toe healing here. If you are new and interested in reversing chronic health conditions or getting out of chronic pain, go to drkevinreese.com. We have a ton of educational materials on that website. And also a great place to start is with our books. We have the red book and the green book. That'll give you a foundation of what head to toe healing is about and whether or not it's something that you want to explore to reverse some of the issues that you have in your life. So let's get back to other questions. Ryan, you addressed one that I had on my list. What is the odds of having somebody getting off of dialysis? Since that lady I spoke with yesterday was she was upset. She was sad that she was in that situation and was hoping to turn it around. So it's wonderful to know that is possible.
Yep. So far, we're at 100%. We've been doing this over 11 years. I've never seen anyone fail to get off of dialysis if they put the work in. That's
awesome. Coach Sean, I wanted to ask you a question. What are the significant consequences? I can't even say that word. What are the significant consequences for people when they have bad posture on their health and daily life?
Well, Dr. Reese specifically says that the most significant consequence was that people had like pinched nerves anytime you have a compressed nerve, because as Coach Gingy was saying earlier, the entire mind is connected to the entire nervous system, and that goes throughout your body. And so anytime that you have bones impeding or muscles impeding on the nerves, it creates a pinched nerve or compressed nerve. And what that further causes is more issues in, let's say, I would say the best way to word it is a blackout. So you're causing blackouts in those areas where the body cannot properly communicate with the mind, or vice versa. And so it just creates chaos essentially, and you just can't communicate properly. Messages and are not being delivered, and then on top of that, I would say it's kinks in the hoses as well. So it's really just the hoses and the nerves. Well, I say hoses, but I mean like the nerves, the blood, the lymphatic system, the circulatory system in general. When that is impacted, it can lead to deficiencies in nutrition, or it can lead to probably some misfiring as far as like mindfulness would go, and just kind of put a threat to the health of your mindfulness. So I hope that answers the question. It's kind of like three answers in one, but it's just the innocent bystanders that go in between your bones and muscles that get the most impact, but also when they're impacted, they cause the most issues or exacerbate further issue.
Thank you for that. Gayleen, we have an answer for you. You asked, how do I locate a healing practitioner in Alabama? We are 100% virtual. We help people all around the world, from New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Mexico, United States, Slovenia, South Africa, UK, all over the world. It doesn't matter where you're located. Go to drkevinreese.com. Go get more information about our program to see how this can help you. And question over here from Tanya for Ryan. What about the foods that have been bioengineered? How do we get around this with fruits and vegetables?
Now, I know my opinion on this will probably be pretty controversial. I don't consider it that big of a deal. And I wish it wasn't a thing. I wish nobody was bioengineering plants to be more tolerable of pesticides and stuff like that. I wish they didn't use pesticides. But in my day-to-day thinking and day-to-day helping people, get over their problems, I don't pay much attention to that. So I don't think it's one of the more important things. Again, I know some people steam is coming from ears right now because it's just so common to blame everything on GMO foods and whatnot. It's one of the most common reasons given for the rise in chronic disease. But I would remind everyone that the rise in chronic disease happened way before. GMO really became a problem in the last 20, 30 years, whereas chronic disease has been rising since the late 1800s. Right, as soon as we entered the age of electrification and industrialization, chronic disease started to happen. And we've spoken here at length, about what happened during industrialization to make us sick, and not just nutrient deficiencies that were caused by the electrification, also the introduction of chemicals and EMF, processed foods in general. Processed foods existed in the 1800s, late 1800s, but they didn't really become a mainstay of the diet until, mid 20th century. So I'm just saying the rise in chronic disease happened way before GMO. And I don't think GMO is a good thing, and I wish it didn't exist. But I personally don't pay too much attention to it myself. And for our customers, the people we're trying to help, I really don't care that much.
You always are a straight shooter, and I love that about you, Ryan. Thank you.
It's simpler than most people make it out to be, right? You hear a lot of these influencers online, and it's like you gotta do everything 100% clean, right? You have to go to farmers markets. Don't you dare buy the cheap eggs. This is the stuff that you hear, right? Meanwhile, I had chronic disease, and I was healed while I was homeless, right? Eating not junk food, because actually, if you eat junk food, you're not poor. You don't know what poor is if you can afford processed foods. But I would never eat organic food. I lived off of rice and pork chops, for years. None of it was good quality or excellent quality, organic, or nothing special about it, right? And I did fine. And not only that, obviously, I lived in low income areas as well. I spoke to low income people. Most of my customers for this whole career here have been on disability, right? So they have limited budgets. So I've never made a big deal about, hey, make sure you increase your food bill by 5 times by buying the organic. Go to the farmers market. I never said that to anyone. I've never instructed a customer to switch to 100% organic. And now in the Dr. Reese clan here, most of the people that come in already do eat well. They eat better than me. A lot of them grow their own food. They're incredibly serious about their food, and yet they still have chronic disease when they come in. It's why they came into the membership, right? So now in the last 10 years, it's become so popular for people to be gluten-free and be organic and go to farmers markets and grow some of their own food and all this stuff, and yet they still have chronic disease, right? It hasn't fixed the problem for the majority of people.
Thank you, Ryan. One other question for you. Marie's saying, I lost one of my kidneys due to cancer. Now I've stopped eating about 7 years ago. Is there any sort of help that you could provide, Marie?
What do you mean stop eating?
Her comment says, I lost one kidney due to cancer, so I stopped eating meat 7 years ago.
Meat.
Meat.
Well, that's very common. Regular doctors will tell you to go vegetarian, vegan. That's been very common in both the mainstream and the alternative worlds for a long time. But we don't like any of these very restricted diets. We are omnivores. We do believe in a balanced diet. Even though it won't give you all of the micronutrients, especially not enough minerals, it's still much better. So she only has one kidney. Well, good news. One kidney she still has. And one kidney can do the work of two for the most part. So I wouldn't see any reason why she should stay off meat. I would definitely get her to increase nutrients. Obviously, we'd put her on all 90 essential nutrients and look at what other symptoms that she has to give us more clues on where her other deficiencies are. But yeah, I wouldn't have somebody off of meat for the rest of their life. That sounds like pretty standard advice, but I think it's bad advice.
Thank you. Coach Gingy, over to you. Can you explain how head-to-toe healing and how it utilizes mindfulness to help the body heal and reverse chronic conditions?
Yes, but I wanted to piggyback on what Ryan was saying, because one of the biggest things that I see in the program is that people have a hard time getting over what they quote unquote know about what it means to be healthy. One of the most common phrases I hear, funny enough, is, no, I eat really healthy and I'm a really healthy person, but I have this health problem. Name it. And that's literally people, it's almost like a level of psychosis to believe that they're healthy even though they have diabetes. I'm really healthy except for, a very serious health condition, just one little thing on the side. It's almost like an afterthought. And one of the biggest obstacles to healing, especially in the membership, is getting over those beliefs. Because if you believe you have to eat organic, you may very well, affect the placebo effect when you're eating non-organic foods and poison yourself with stress or with expectation or something like that. So what we try to do is we want people to let go and not hold so steadfast to what they think is healthy, because if they knew what was healthy, they wouldn't be coming to us to figure out how to get healthier. So, the first thing I would say is just kind of go back to the drawing board. Become almost childlike in the way that you look at your health and your recovery and ask, am I right about this? And do a little bit of research, do a little bit of diligence, be curious as to why Coach Ryan would say that organic is not really that important. Because one of the beliefs that I had coming in, and Ryan and I talked about this, is I was like, pesticides are supposed to kill the bugs in your stomach, or kill bugs in general. And if you eat it, it's going to kill the bugs in your stomach, and you're going to be decreasing your microbiome to a certain degree. So you're going to have to constantly repair that with probiotics, and all these people eating non-organic. And he was like, well, I've never seen that. I'm like, well, is it my belief or is it Ryan's 11 straight years of practice that I should put my belief into? And I was like, okay, well, let me just see if this is true. And I let go of that belief. I tried non-organic food. And yeah, while it didn't taste as good and it wasn't as like nutrient dense and rich in flavor and experience and all of that, I absolutely prefer organic food. But if there's a situation where, you know, I don't have the option, I'm not going to think it's bad now to eat an orange or an apple or some berries or something that's not organic. So I just want to throw that out there because getting over these ideas is generally the biggest hurdle for people that join the membership. Like we had one conversation recently. This person was like, olive oil is a health food. And I was like, well, in one sense, you're right, because olive oil is a superfood, but it has to be consumed within hours, days, or at least like a week or something before it oxidizes too much where it becomes toxic. Because the more oxygen bonds with the oil, the more oxidative stress in the body, the more antioxidants your body needs, and we just can't keep up internally. And stuff like that's like, oh wow, yeah, it's very simple. But the thought process never clicked all the way through, thinking through the whole process. And so I would say, as far as mindfulness goes, this is the number one biggest hurdle. Second to that, it's how to manage stress. And we just had a couple really good conversations in the mindfulness class this last week where we talked about various triggers that can happen and how we respond to the triggers. Because the way that we work on it is you can either address the trigger itself or you could address how you respond to the trigger, but both are kind of getting at the same problem from two different sides. And man, it was eye-opening for people to see, oh yeah, when I have this trigger, then I feel happy. And if I have this trigger, I feel angry. And if I have this trigger, and they're able to now see the root cause of their emotional experience and work with it. Because if you can get to the point where you can self-regulate your nervous system, well, then you can choose to turn on digestion or choose to turn on stress and cortisol, and you can choose to go back and forth with these things as opposed to it just happening to you. Because generally what happens is people are kind of blown about in the winds of life, like a leaf in the wind, and they don't really have any real control or choice in their emotional state. It's kind of like a poor me, I feel this way because the world did this to me. And that's one of the symptoms we switch around in the mindfulness class to where you actually create your emotional state as opposed to be affected by it. Well, you'll always be affected by it, but you get to choose it, which is a really empowering state to be in.
Thank you for that. We had another comment here from Christopher. Christopher is asking, Coach Ryan, I have type 1 diabetes. Is there a reversal for that? That's not exactly the word he used, but is there a reversal for type 1 diabetes, or can there improvements be made?
So type 1 is complicated because I say that there's two types of type 1. One is real type 1 and the other one is pseudo type 1. And most people that we do encounter with type 1, it's actually false type 1. It's pseudo type 1. Because real type 1 is the inability to produce insulin from birth. It's a birth defect. Now, usually people are diagnosed in childhood or even all the way up to puberty because they're able to produce enough insulin for the child body, but not enough for the growing body, not enough for the adult body. So they're diagnosed with type 1 at that point and they're given insulin. But there's a heck of a lot of people out there, and probably the majority who are diagnosed with type 1 now. Currently, it's now the majority that are diagnosed later in life. I might be wrong on that, but we see an awful lot of it. I mean, I might be wrong on the actual proportion, how many are pseudo and how many are not. I'm not sure, but we see a lot of people who are diagnosed in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. That's not type 1 diabetes. That is pseudo type 1 diabetes. It means you had the ability to produce insulin and something stopped that. And so we've gone into great detail about this in the past. It would take literally this entire hour to go through it all. I've written about it as well. So let me say, for the pseudo people, again, the fact that you could produce insulin before, it's proof that your body is capable of producing insulin. We just need to fix your metabolic problem, and you should be able to produce insulin again. So we've seen a heck of a lot of people get off of insulin completely when they were diagnosed later in life. I'm near 100% confident that we can get people off of insulin, or that you can get off of insulin if you were diagnosed later in life. If you were diagnosed early in life, there's still the possibility that you just had a metabolic problem that messed with your pancreas, or it was autoimmune where your body attacked the beta cells in the pancreas and you couldn't produce insulin. And just like the people who are diagnosed later in life, there's a chance that that can be reversed. But I do believe that most people who are diagnosed early in life, this is a birth defect. It's a form of a birth defect where your body simply is not able to produce enough. Now, having said that, both types of type 1, we've seen most of them be able to reduce their insulin significantly. Almost all of them are able to reduce it to some amount. Most of them are significantly reduced. Even if they've been on insulin for decades, they've been on it since they were a kid, often we see it go down. That's first of all. Second of all, type 1 is, or it can be thought of as separate from any other problem that's going on. So what else is going on with the person? Do they have headaches? Are they overweight? Is their sleep crummy? High blood pressure, arthritis, pain? What else is going on with them? Because it's near 100% certainty that we are able to help you get rid of those symptoms. So in other words, if something is a birth defect, like cerebral palsy, for example, as Dr. Reese says, the cake is already baked. You can't unbake the cake. You got cerebral palsy, you got cerebral palsy. No nutrient program is going to reverse that. It's not going to grow that part of the brain. But we can ease quality of life problems for that same person, right? Same thing. Do they have a digestion problem? Rashes, allergic reactions? Are they sensitive to things? Do they get headaches? Do they have pain? Do they sleep properly? All these other quality of life things. So if we're not able to get a type 1 off of insulin, especially if it's an actual birth defect, and it's probably not going to happen, that doesn't mean that we can't improve every other aspect of life, basically.
All right. One of the comments in the chat was a follow-up to what Coach Gingy was sharing about mindfulness and how important it is. Felicia says that is why mindfulness is so important. You can be eating like gold, but still make yourself sick because of your mindset. That is so true. Any additional thoughts on that, Gingy?
Well, we see it all the time. People do everything perfect, but they're constantly pessimistic, or they're constantly stressed out. They're constantly focused on the future and trying to prepare for what may or may not happen. They have all these expectations, they keep getting let down, and they're constantly triggering themselves over and over and over. And a person that lives in that state, like, it doesn't matter how perfect everything else is. You could go work out perfectly, you could supplement and have the perfect nutritional profile, you could have a posture that's everything perfect, and you can have like this really good way of life, but ultimately, if you're the one creating an experience of dissatisfaction, of what is the term for it, failed expectations or something, where you're constantly feeling like you're let down, and relationships keep coming and going, and you're not rooted in an actual healthy mental and emotional state of practice, then you're going to constantly be shutting off digestion and having deficiencies creep up, and then stressing yourself out and having all these stress hormones increasing inflammation or depleting your immune system, so you're chronically sick all the time, and there's always something that's going on with somebody who's not psychologically sound. So we strive for inner peace with Dr. Reese, because that state of inner peace is foundationally necessary for you to build the rest of the pieces on top of it. Like if you fall off with your posture a little bit, maybe you kind of don't get too many symptoms. You fall off with nutrition, some deficiencies start creeping up. And so those, you can kind of have a little bit of lax with. And the same thing with mental. Like if you're going through a hard time, like if you have a relative that passed away or something, you don't want to just go full in down the dark side, because that'll be a hard hole to dig your way out of. But at least in those states, they're not as bad as they would be if you were already there in a dark space anyway, and then you got pushed even further. So like what I keep telling people is it makes all of life better. Not only does it help you heal more, but it makes the hard times less hard, and it makes the better times more better. It's a really impactful, powerful state of mind. Yeah.
All right. Dawn is asking Ryan, I have MGUS. It's a blood disorder. I looked it up. It's a abnormal protein in the blood. Is that something that we can work with?
Anytime there's an abnormal protein or enzyme, whether it's kidney or liver or whatever, if it shows up on a blood test, it can be reversed. Yes.
Thank you.
What would we need to do specifically? We would look at her other symptoms and decide where to start. What category requires the most attention. Probably start with the digestion protocol, like we do with almost everyone. Get them off the bad foods, get them all on all 90 essential nutrients, and boost certain nutrients or use certain herbs depending on her other symptoms.
So for those that are just tuning in or have been paying attention for a little while and not sure if Head to Toe Healing is for you, Head to Toe Healing is a membership that we have through drkevinreese.com. We have you get started, get a foundation, start with the books, the red book and the green book, to see if Head to Toe Healing is for you. And it answers so many questions that we would have a difficult time doing just in a short 15-minute, 20-minute conversation. So if it's interesting to you, what we do with Head to Toe Healing, we help you get your body in a position where it can start healing itself, given the 3 macro methods: getting on the right nutrition, getting off the bad foods, supporting the musculoskeletal system with posture alignment therapy, and also mindfulness training. It works amazingly well when those 3 elements are done together in our Head to Toe Healing membership. So if you're curious about that, go to drkevinreese.com. We have a link on there for more information, YouTube videos. We also have testimonials on there. Or if you want to just reach out and have a free consultation with one of our coaches, we would be happy to connect with you. There's a start button there, and you can find out if it's for you. But let's get back to some of our questions. We have another one. I'm going to reference this over to Ryan. It's one of the individuals here says they've been drinking 2 glasses of kefir. Is it good to have natural active bacteria? Will that help me?
I mean, yeah. Especially if the kefir, or sorry, we say kefir, you guys say kefir. Kefir is a weird word. If it's raw, it's better to me, yes. But, a lot of people think that you need to have these specialty fermented dairy beverages or all natural yogurt with active cultures in it in order to get probiotics. It's just not true. You can take dry encapsulated probiotics as well. It will work. It just doesn't have to come. It doesn't have to be transported into the body with a dairy product. It's just not necessary. And kefir can go either way, right? It can be extremely beneficial for some people, and it can be a big problem for other people, considering that so many people are sensitive to dairy in the first place.
Another question from Carol. She's saying, what about Parkinson's disease? Is that something that's reversible?
To me, almost every single case of Parkinson's disease, and I said almost, is caused by doctors. It's a physician-caused disease. Doctors cause dementia, and they cause neurological problems. They do this in 2 main ways. First of all is with their terrible advice. They tell you to avoid salt. That's essential and incredibly important. They tell you to avoid saturated fat and cholesterol. Both are essential and extremely important. They tell you, other than that, oh, don't worry, eat whatever you want. It's an odd stance that they take, right? Don't you dare eat salt or cholesterol, but other than that, eat whatever you want. Food doesn't matter. I always found that such an odd thing. So terrible food advice, and as well as the failure to give you good advice, good nutritional advice or something, right? The most a doctor will say is eat right and exercise, which means basically nothing. But then the most important factor for the development of Parkinson's to me is pharmaceutical drugs. And once again, I said almost at the beginning, but I would say that the vast majority of cases of true Parkinson's where they have overt symptoms is caused by pharmaceutical drugs. And they're put on those drugs in the first place because of the failure of medical doctors and the medical system in general, and the educational system and the government and the collusion that create this big medical monopoly that fails to give us actual good, practical, and scientifically verified health advice. They don't. So they could have prevented the need for the drugs in the first place, and it might not be Parkinson's drugs, right? I'm saying blood pressure drugs, statin drugs, proton pump inhibitors, Tums, anything that lowers stomach acid because it prevents you from absorbing minerals properly and digesting food properly. Their bad advice led you to need drugs. Those drugs messed up your system more. And if you dare go into a doctor's office with the beginning symptoms of Parkinson's or MS, like small things, I'm losing my balance a little bit, I'm tripping a little bit, I'm bumping into things a little bit, I'm walking into the kitchen and forgetting why I went in there, right? Now they're going to put you on hardcore drugs, and now your deterioration is going to be rapid. This is the case history for the vast majority of people that we've ever dealt with who came to us with Parkinson's, MS, ALS, Huntington's, whatever it is, you name it. And yet, my at least theory is, because you can't prove it, my theory is that the vast majority of those people never would have had any of those symptoms in the first place if they had had good information in the first place and good advice in the first place, and then weren't put on drugs for simple problems that don't need drugs. Right? This is doctors' biggest problem. Rather than learning how to fix your stomach acid, they just suppress it. Right? Rather than learning how to fix your gallbladder, they remove it. Right? So they suck at handling chronic disease in the first place. That leads people to be put on a variety of drugs for things that would have been simple to fix. And those drugs deteriorate your body even more. And once that hits, now you're on the serious drugs. Now you're on the steady decline. You're on the steep slope downwards.
Wow.
Let me just round this out too. There are other contributors, of course, pharmaceutical injections, I'm sure, pesticides. Even though I dismissed the organic foods being the most important thing in the world, I said that it shouldn't exist. We still shouldn't be consuming this many chemicals. It does add up a toxic burden in our body for sure. This is a real thing. It's just not the primary cause of disease as it's made out to be in the mainstream world now. EMF is another huge one. We've seen people stop shaking in minutes by giving anti-EMF devices, just even placing one in their hand, stop shaking. That's happened numerous times to several people. We've had people, not necessarily with Parkinson's, but with MS, where they had to use the crutches that strap to you, right? So they can't drop the crutches. And they were able to walk out of the store without those crutches, right? So we've seen massive neurological improvements caused by mitigating the EMF. So I just wanted to say there are some other contributing factors to this as well. All the normal stuff that people talk about, like heavy metals and toxins and stress and all that stuff, is going to contribute to the deterioration of the nervous system and going to prevent your body from being able to rebuild its tissues optimally, including nervous system tissues.
So let's loop back to our primary topic, kidney dysfunction. Another element of the kidneys, a lot of times people come to us or have known family members, friends that have had numerous kidney stones. Ryan, with those, they're so painful for people. They're just absolutely horrible. What are the contributing factors to that? Is it a nutritional imbalance or is it kidney dysfunction? A little bit of both? Can you shed some light on that?
Well, remember, in the vast majority of cases, well, I guess not remember because we didn't mention this yet, I don't think. The vast majority of cases, we believe that it's not actually a kidney problem. It's a blood flow problem. It's a circulation problem. Right? The little tiny veins that the kidney is full of are clogged up. Now, that's the primary problem in most kidney disease. In the case of stones, it's mostly mineral deficiency, specifically calcium and magnesium deficiency. And it can get quite complicated to explain that because this trips a lot of people out because they think that excess calcium causes kidney stones. Well, first of all, it's not true. It's been proven not true in many different studies, both epidemiological and clinical studies, or laboratory studies, sorry. But it's impossible to get enough calcium from the food supply anyways. So it couldn't possibly be from too much calcium because nobody in the Western world is getting too much calcium unless you're eating a whole bottle of calcium supplements every single day or something like that. But even then, they've tried to induce kidney stones in animals by giving them too much calcium. It doesn't work. The only way it works is with magnesium deficiency or calcium deficiency. That's how you get stones forming, especially because when your body's calcium deficient, it starts pulling calcium out of the bones to put it into the blood. And since it's not going through the digestive pathway as it's supposed to, like this is kind of a backup system for the body, right? Calcium is so important to have in the blood that if it's low, your body hits the emergency button and pulls it from the bones and teeth. But since it's not coming through the digestion, it's not being funneled properly into where it needs to go, and it can build up in certain places. And if you have other nutrient deficiencies, especially like K2 deficiency. There's a bunch of them that are involved here that can cause that calcium to stack up even harder and harden calcification, basically. So there's that. There's also vitamin deficiencies, like in oxalate kidney stones. People think it's caused by the oxalates. Well, no, because if you have adequate B6 and other B vitamins, then that just simply won't happen. And you shouldn't be getting reactions to oxalates either. This is not going to change overnight if you're oxalate sensitive right now, but over time, over weeks and months, this can absolutely be reversed, especially with adequate levels of B vitamins coming in along with all the minerals. Remember, the kidney's an organ, right? Organs are fatty nutrients, they're fatty tissues, so they're soft tissues. So all of the organs need the same basic nutrients. Maybe slightly different numbers of it, but the same basic nutrients. So all the fat-soluble nutrients, selenium and zinc and vitamins D, E, A, and K, the omegas, all of those are really, really important for every single organ, from the brain to the heart to the kidney to whatever it is. And these are some of the most common deficiencies in our food supply. These are also some of the more difficult nutrients to absorb in many cases, especially if you have a digestion problem. Goes back to processed foods, right? Processed foods are the primary causes of digestion problems, which causes malabsorption, which means you're bound to be deficient in some of those nutrients that I just mentioned. And there's a much longer list of nutrients that are involved in some way in the kidneys or in kidney stone formation. And so the average person is walking around with a malabsorption problem while eating from a food supply that's fundamentally deficient in nutrients in the first place. This is a recipe for disaster. This is why so many people have metabolic problems. And again, kidney problems are in that umbrella, metabolic syndrome.
I'm glad you addressed that, because I was going to ask you the difference between calcium kidney stones and acidic kidney stones. So the oxalates are part of it, but it sounds like it's more of the B vitamin deficiency for people that get the acidic kidney stones. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, oxalates and phytates for that matter as well. These are not new additions to the diet. Humans and animals have been eating these things forever, since the dawn of time, right? So what happened in recent years? Kidney stones were not endemic until recently. So it's clearly not oxalates. Your forefathers ate oxalates, right? Every single one of them ate oxalates and phytates, and they didn't know anything that we're discussing here today. And it didn't cause a problem for them. Most likely, most assuredly to me, it's because they had an adequate intake of B vitamins and other minerals in general.
There was another individual in the comments here. Let me just get to their question. They were saying that they have multiple family members that have diabetes and they feel it's genetic. Could you address that?
There's nothing to do with genetics. If it had something to do with genetics, there would be a steady problem. The problem is going like this, increasing massively, rapidly in decades. Your genes do change, and it's a common argument out there to say that genes don't change that fast. Well, actually they do. But still, I don't care who you are or what your genes are or how many members of your family have whatever disease we're talking about. Almost certainly it's reversible. Almost everything is reversible. So if it's reversible, it's not genetic. Right? Genetic is just a cop-out for saying, well, that's the cause. Well, if genes were the cause, it would not be reversible. But we've never failed with someone with diabetes. I would never seen them be unable to get off of diabetes drugs and attain a proper, healthy fasting glucose and the low A1C and whatnot. So it can't be genetic if it's reversible. But sorry, I guess to explain this further, the family thinks it's genetic. The reason they think it's genetic is because they all have it, obviously. And I guess that's natural to assume because that's what you've been taught. But what you really share is an environment. You eat from the same grocery store, even if you eat different foods. So you're all nutrient deficient. You have the same habits. You stay up together watching the same TV shows, screw up your sleep together, right? Maybe you both drink alcohol. I don't know. They share habits, but primarily they share the same nutrient deficiencies. And it's not just within families. This is within society, right? Diabetes is massive. Pre-diabetes too. I mean, you add them together, to me and some other sources, it's roughly half the population. Roughly 50% of the population has some medically significant blood sugar problem. Again, could be diabetes, could be pre-diabetes, and even more common could be hypoglycemia. Even though it's not usually diagnosed, it's extremely common. I'm sticking with that somewhere around half of the population has a significant blood sugar problem, whether they know it or not, and whether it shows up on your blood tests or not. Meaning, if they measure your fasting glucose, it's just a snapshot. And your A1C might be fine. Your A1C is more of an average reflection of the last 3 months or so of your blood sugar. Now, it might even out to an average. We've seen this many times where the A1C looks fine, fasting glucose looks okay, but really they have hypoglycemia. Because what it means is that especially after they eat, which is reactive hypoglycemia, it dips below their baseline. So you get intense cravings and mood changes and stuff like that, fatigue, very common with hypoglycemia. So I'm just saying that's so common, and yet we look at their blood work, and most of the time their A1C is fine and their fasting glucose is basically fine, maybe even a little bit on the high side, and yet they have all the symptoms of hypoglycemia. And if they did a 6-hour glucose tolerance test, it would surely show that.
To add on to this topic, you were bringing up diabetes. There's somebody in the comments, Susan, she's saying, I'm a type 2 diabetic. What can I do about that? Also, I'm on statin drugs for cholesterol and I want to get off those. How would I do that?
For the first question, you should join the membership, because that way we can help you. You sign up for an entire year, so you're locked in, because diabetes, even though I have seen people get off their diabetes meds in less than a week when done properly, still tends to take longer, and it tends to take commitment from you, right? So I could give you a list of things to do right now. It's up to you to actually do them. When you come into the membership, not only are you kind of locked in with commitment, you got to get your money's worth out of the program, right? But we're there to help you and adjust things as needed. It doesn't always go exactly to plan for each person. And we never lay it out like, hey, you do this, and then 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 you're good. We don't have that. We've systematized it as much as we can, but it still requires pivoting. For many people, most people, it requires some kind of pivoting, changing course, trying something different to get them to the result as fast as they possibly can. So I would recommend joining the membership, because I can't possibly give you a protocol here, especially without knowing you. This is the key, right? Anyone who's saying, oh, you just need to take 50 milligrams of this and 200 milligrams of this and this, they don't even know you, right? We need to know, well, who are you? How much do you weigh? What country do you live in? That matters for product availability and so on. What's your normal day of eating like? A lot of people have been over dieting themselves and screwing up their metabolism. So they come to us with diabetes, but their metabolism is really screwed up from years of intermittent fasting and weird restricted diets and stuff like that. So who are you? What are your patterns right now? What have you tried already? What are you taking already? What do you got in your medicine cabinet? We can use some of that. We'll add some more in, right? It's customization is what we do for the majority of people, even though we have some kind of standardization within that. We still are there to guide you. That's the point of the program. And you do the mindfulness, and you do the posture alignment therapy. So we work on the whole body at once. That's why it's called head to toe healing. And that's why we do have the best results in the business. I believe, and Dr. Reese believes, and he brags about, the amount of testimonials that we have on camera. It appears to be the most. No one appears to have done have more testimonials than we do. It's pretty amazing. And this is the reason why. It's because we hit it from multiple angles. We pivot when needed. You're locked in. You're committed to doing the work. And again, you get all aspects of this that we do, not just nutrition. And the second question was, she was on statin drugs. Well, I promise you, if you stay on statin drugs, you will never reverse diabetes, and you will get new problems, one after another. Statin drugs, we call them one of the 2 worst drugs in the world. You cannot get better on a statin drug. Now, that's a little bit exaggerated. It's not 100% true. There are some people who have gotten benefits while being on a statin, but it's not something that I would be that excited about. Usually they get enough benefits until they get off the statin, and then now they get the real benefits, right? But most of the time, if you're on a statin drug, I expect no benefits at all. And I'll tell you straight up, don't waste your time and money. Don't bother with the diet. Don't bother with any supplements. If you're on a statin drug, you're going to go downhill. That's how bad it is. So we do have we can never tell anyone whether to get off the drug or not. It has to be their choice, but we can talk about it. And we do have a system that would support people's body in a specific way if they choose to get off of statin drugs. And it's very simple. And to be honest, you don't even need that. Because if you Google it or ask your doctor, hey doc, what is the side effects of me stopping a statin drug? Well, it's not like an antidepressant or an antipsychotic or an anti-seizure drug or even many of these beta blockers and ACE inhibitors where there's withdrawal symptoms, where stopping can actually be dangerous if you stop cold turkey. For many drugs, that's dangerous. For statin drugs, that is simply not the case. Ask your doctor, ask Google, what happens if I stop a statin drug? Nothing. The only thing that's going to happen, most likely, is your cholesterol is going to go back up because it was being artificially suppressed by this drug that stops your liver from being able to process fats properly, which is why it's so bad, because I mentioned earlier, all your organs need fatty nutrients, and the liver screws with all of them, messes up the metabolism of all of them. So you can't possibly be healthy while being on a statin drug. But what happens if you stop it? Nothing. Your cholesterol goes back up. And so what? Who cares? Right? High cholesterol by itself isn't a problem. It's a risk factor, which is highly debated, and I would say it's really not a risk factor. All it means to me, if you have elevated cholesterol, it just means that you have a metabolic dysfunction. And you also have diabetes, so therefore you already have proof that you already have metabolic dysfunction. So I don't even need to know what your cholesterol is. It doesn't matter. But your cholesterol should go down. Absolutely. If it's elevated, it should go down once you get your metabolism working correctly. The problem is with a statin drug, it's not gonna. It's not gonna. It's gonna stop it from working properly. It's gonna make sure it doesn't work properly until you need another drug and another drug and another drug, and the downhill slide continues. So there is no risk to stopping a statin drug except increasing cholesterol, which doesn't matter. And so the websites out there and your doctor will say, well, if you stop the statin drug, you'll be at risk for cardiovascular disease. That's because of the false association between cholesterol and heart disease. And again, we're not the only ones out there saying that cholesterol does not cause heart disease. This is becoming pretty mainstream now at this point, and probably within the next 5 to 10 years, you won't hear doctors talking about cholesterol anymore or using statin drugs anymore. At least I hope. I hope. You know, because so many major studies, especially have been done in the last few years, and come out and said, look, this connection is false. It was false from the start. It was a scam from the start that high cholesterol causes heart disease. It just never did, never was. It was always barking up the wrong tree. So if you're on a statin drug right now, you're on it because you choose to be on it. Remember that. You are in charge of what goes in your body. Your doctor works for you, right? They can't force you to take a drug unless you go into the hospital unconscious, basically. You chose to take the doctor's advice, and you can choose to stop it if you want to. And what will happen? Your cholesterol will go back up unless you do something about it, which means changing the lifestyle, changing your nutritional terrain, which is what we would do. And again, we could give you a protocol if we knew who you are, but I can't randomly give a protocol to somebody here. But let me just reemphasize, even though we have a program to help people get off of statins, or at least to support their body in an important way that would matter if you've been on a statin drug, even that doesn't matter that much, because plenty of people just simply stop it with no side effects at all. The only side effect is that they actually start to feel better.
If you found benefit from this live that we've done today, we will be back again next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. But in the meantime, if head to toe healing sounds intriguing to you, you want to get more information, go to drkevinreese.com. You can check out the YouTube videos that are linked there. You can look at the testimonials. There's a start page that gives you more information about what the membership is about, what it is involved on your part, because it is a commitment on your part. You need to be willing to show up and do the work. The coaches are guides in the membership. You do the work for an entire year. You're making yourself a priority to reverse chronic pain, chronic health conditions. Make sure you also check out the book page, because you'll want to start with this book, the red book, and the green book first, to get a foundation to find out, is head to toe healing for you before you make it a commitment. But other than that, we will be back again this time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time next week. And we wish you all well. Thank you.
Take care,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you.